All right, welcome into SportsBit Betting Insight today, Monday, March 21st. Paulie and Teddy, play of the day coming up. We're red hot, 4-1 last week. Deep dive with the tournament, big game breakdown, 1 in the association, 2 in the NIT. All tournament here to start, Teddy. How was your weekend? Did you leave the house? What was the first 4 days like?
And it's funny because, you wake up Monday morning, there's nothing, you're absolutely exhausted, Paul. I mean, especially given the nature of the stressful endings in so many of these games over the course of the weekend. Did I leave the house? Yes. I went out of the house for a brief period on Saturday afternoon before all the games started. You know how they had like one game, and then all the games? I got out for a little bit prior to all the games started, prior to the Indiana-Kentucky. How about you? Did you leave the house? Did you shower all weekend? I didn't shave from like Thursday until just before we went on air today, buddy.
Saturday, I did go down to the Westgate to check out the atmosphere and the environment in the theater. It was it lived up to the hype, man. The place was packed, great atmosphere, and the finishes on Friday and Sunday night. Oh man, especially that last 5 minutes on Friday night with those.
That was an epic stretch of games on Friday night. I mean, it really was. So yeah, I'm with you 100%.
I do have a rant on the committee, and we said they did a horrible job putting the right teams in. We'll get to that later in the show. How about the seeding? You had 2 11 seeds that were favored against 3 seeds. Stephen F. Austin was favored for a short time. They're a 14 seed. And then when you look at the upsets, a 13, a 14, and a 15 won on the same day. That's never happened before. 10 double-digit seeds won in the round of 64. That's a record. And in the first 27 years of the tournament, 4 15 seeds won. That's been matched in the last five tournaments. When you look at this, Middle Tennessee's not a 15. They're in Conference USA. When you think of 15 seed, that should be SWAC, MEAC, SWAC, something like Northeast Conference. The Conference USA has won back-to-back years now. UAB was a 14 last year. And what also they did with the seeding, as you see all these high seeds that were favored, Cinderella's dead too. One, they were barely invited to the party. And I don't consider Gonzaga a Cinderella because they're with the big boys now, but it's all teams from power conferences in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, and I mean, that's... we talk about from the teams only surviving from the power conference. What do we have? 1 West Coast Conference team left? Everything else, power conferences? Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that when we get to deep dive and break down some of the hard numbers from the first 2 rounds of the tournament. But, I mean, there are 2 things to consider here, Paul. One is that, again, you and I both live in Las Vegas. We know that the betting lines are set for a reason. They're not set by accident. And if the seeding committee was made up of Las Vegas bookmakers, guess what? We'd have better seeding. The seeding committee is made of a bunch of academics and random people that are associated with the NCAA. Seeding, not so good. But the other thing that it tells us, where there were 4 up 15 seeds winning in 47 years, and then now 4 of them the last 5.
Yeah, 27 years. Yep.
Yeah, there's parity. I mean, the parity talk is very real, Paul. The 15 seeds today and the 14 seeds today are better than they were 10 years ago, and definitely better than they were 20 and 30 years ago.
Guys leaving early, all the games on television. I'd rather be a star in a small conference than sit the bench. Those are excellent points. I'm on board with that. To the bad beats. Oh, man, how about one for the...
Where do we start?
Oh, how about the books here? Stephen F. Austin and Notre Dame. The bad landing for the sports books. You could have grabbed plus 1.5 both ways before tip.
Well, yeah, I mean, the tourney is a reminder of just how razor thin the edges and outcomes can be. I mean, this photo from the St. Joe Cincinnati game shows how thin that margin is. Oops, sorry, you lose, go home. Quarter of a second late. You talked about the Stephen F. Austin Notre Dame. You could have gotten both teams at plus 1.5 within the last 2 hours before tip-off, Paul. I mean, bookmakers certainly weren't celebrating anywhere near as much as the Fighting Irish were. That was a bad result for the house, but not the only one on Sunday. I mean, 3 of the outright Sunday NCAA tourney winners literally came down to the final second of regulation.
Yep, and you also had St. Joe's, who led by 7 with 5 minutes, and they had the ball. Xavier was up 9 with 6 minutes, and they couldn't close. And then you got Northern Iowa. Oh, mercy! Oh, God, up 12 with 35 seconds, 4 turnovers, a 14-2 run by A&M to end it. Hey, guys, throw the ball that way. Throw it to the other end of the court. Don't throw it under your own basket when they trap you. What a disaster for Northern Iowa.
If the Panthers didn't cover in overtime, this might have been the single worst beat of all time. I mean, ever. You're up 12 with 35 freaking seconds left. That's tough, man. I mean, obviously a 14-2 run. What Northern Iowa have? 4 turnovers and a foul. Gilder gets 2 steals, gets an offensive rebound, gets an assist for a point. And, of course, Texas A&M, remember, they made 6 field goals for the entire first half. They also made 6 field goals in the last 35 seconds of regulation to send that game into OT. Northern Iowa still got the money. But, man, that was absolutely brutal. Brutal if you had the Panthers advancing or some Northern Iowa money line in your pocket. That's as tough a beat as it gets. It just doesn't, I mean, in the regular season, you don't see that because they don't fight like that in the last 35 seconds. But come tournament time, they might, kind of like the way the Badgers were fighting against Xavier last night, Paul.
The one time Xavier is expected to go to the Sweet 16, they get a great seed. They can't do it. They're the 2 seed. Again, they're up 9 with 6 minutes. They're on a nice run. And Bronson KOENIG went crazy. 2 threes late. They're down 3. Hits a long 3 to tie it. They get a stop. And then the game winner from the corner. You saw Kaminsky do the slide on social media, and Wisconsin somehow, some way, after they survived Pitt when they couldn't score, they're moving on to the Sweet 16. They win by 3.
Yeah, and I mean, think about the result there. Okay, Badgers are shooting down 3. There's about 12 seconds left. I think at that point, 11 or 12 seconds left. If they miss, they foul. Xavier goes to the line. Xavier probably gets the money. So then Wisconsin hits the 3, and that's not necessarily a disastrous result for either side. You got a Wisconsin ticket in your pocket. Hey, you didn't necessarily want overtime, but it sure as heck beats losing in regulation. You have a Xavier ticket in your pocket, like, all right, OT, we're fine. We're going to beat this team in OT. We can win by 5 or more. And then, of course, Xavier screws up their last possession. Xavier screwed up their last 8 possessions, it felt like. They did not play good offense down the stretch of that ballgame. And obviously you give the Badgers defense a lot of credit. They mucked things up pretty good over the course of the weekend. But KOENIG hits the 3, and kudos to the Wisconsin backers, turning defeat into victory in a matter of a couple of shots and 12 seconds on the clock.
With so many games and so much chaos. How about the Iowa-Temple game? I mean, you got the kid from Iowa who's 86%. He missed 2. Then they foul Temple shooting a 3. The kid's 70-some%. He makes all 3. And then Iowa wins, and Iowa gets the win in overtime. But there were so many examples of a kid 90% missing free throws, 86%. Then the guy who's 56%, nothing but net. I mean, you saw a lot of that over the 4 days.
You sure did, Paul. And we'll riff about a lot of those in the deep dive section of today's show. But for now, what do you think? You ready to take a little break and come back with big game preview?
Big game breakdown coming up. Spurs and the Hornets. The Spurs, what a performance Saturday night. We'll run it down on SportsBit. Betting and insight today. All right, we're back on SportsBit. Time for big game breakdown. We start in the association. The Spurs and the Hornets. Spurs 6, 198.5. Spurs on the road. How great is that San Antonio defense? Look what they did last week. The Western Conference elite teams, power teams, coming to town. Here's what the Spurs did. Look at this graph. Here's points per game. Golden State, 115 a game, number 1 in the league. OKC, 109.8. That's number 2. The Clippers, 106.4. That is 6th in the league. They played the Spurs. They held I can't believe this. Held the Warriors to 79 points, OKC to 85, and the Clippers to 87. Then you look at points per 100 possessions. Golden State, 112, number 1. OKC, number 2. Clippers, number 6. And then you see what they held, what the Spurs did to those 3 teams. Teddy, what they did Saturday. Curry and Thompson combined for only 2 made threes. They had no room that entire game.
No, so much for Pop and company playing possum in the rematch the way they did the first time. San Antonio showed their defensive hand. But again, I don't necessarily think that what you saw on Saturday is what you're going to see when those 2 teams meet in the postseason. I think the Warriors will find a way. But I'll tell you what, we were talking about Golden State and their need to excel in that grinding style based on probable playoff opponents. they did not fare well in that regard against the Spurs this past weekend. But, here's San Antonio playing this incredible defense. We talked a lot about the Hornets and how well the Hornets have been playing in recent weeks. But last week, a couple of let-ups. They didn't show the focus that a playoff team is supposed to have. They gave away what should have been layups at home. Certainly the game against Denver is supposed to be a layup. The game against Dallas, they didn't play well either. So, the only time they had the lead in either one of those ball games, again, big home favorites in both contests, they led 3-2 against the Nuggets. So we've seen a lot of good play from Charlotte over the course of the last month, but this past week, perhaps a couple of cracks in the Bobcats' armor.
Yeah, this will be the play of the day.
For the Hornets.
Yep, Hornet. Yep. Game number 2. This will be the play of the day later in the show. Game number 2, George Washington and Monmouth. Yes, Monmouth in a big game. NIT. How about that? ESPN cameras are there. Monmouth 3.5, 151.5 the total. The students back from spring break, and the first game against Bucknell, there was only 2,600 fans there. And you look at their last 2 conference games, 4,100 in both of those. But as much as the hype and the talk has been about the bench and the antics, it's Justin Robinson who's been key and a dynamite player for Monmouth, Teddy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was a MAAC Player of the Year, or MAAC, the Metro Atlantic Player of the Year, not the Mid-American Conference. 19.6 points per game. He had 130 assists, 78 steals, and oh, by the way, he closes out games by hitting better than 84% from the charity stripe. He's a winner. He's been a winner throughout the course of his career, and yeah, the Monmouth bench gets a lot of love, but Robinson's the guy in all of their big games. But, you talked about the ESPN cameras, and here's Monmouth in a big game per se. But one thing that is really a difference maker in NIT games is like the ESPN cameras get some of the road teams up as well. Because George Washington, they were flat against Hofstra last week. They really were. Senior starters, Garino and Larson and McDonald, they all started in a first-round NCAA game versus Memphis 2 years ago. And then NIT bid last year, NIT bid this year, now a road NIT game against a team getting all their fans back from spring break. It's kind of a disappointment for GW, but perhaps the ESPN cameras give them a little bit of extra edge, a little bit of extra energy in a spot where they might be flat here, just like they were against Hofstra.
Staying with the NIT, one more game, Washington and San Diego State. Washington on the road. The Aztecs are 5 and 148. Washington a year ahead of schedule. They start 3 freshmen in the starting lineup, and they often play 5 freshmen together, Teddy. So, Romar's got an opportunity to get back to the tournament next year.
Oh, I mean, honestly, Washington's got a ton of talent. I mean, if you watch this team play, they can play with anyone. And that means they can play up to anyone's level or they can play down to anyone's level. And so many of the Huskies games this year came down. It was almost like the NCAA tournament every week. Came down to one possession at the end of the game. Washington was in tight game after tight game after tight game. But, you wonder, how did these kids adapt so quickly, Paul? Well, most of them were from winning programs. Look at this quote from Lorenzo Romar, their head coach, back in early January. Quote, "I think our guys are pretty resilient. They come from backgrounds, a lot of them, where they've won games. They've been winners. They're accustomed to winning games. They're accustomed to knowing what it takes, even though they haven't done it at this level. I think that helps." And, of course, they also have their senior, Andrew Andrews, already graduated last June, so there's no academic pressures. He was the leading scorer in the Pac-12. But, what do you say about the Aztecs? At Washington and their herky-jerky style, they want to get up and down. That's the last thing San Diego State wants to do, Paul.
Yeah, they don't want to run, and also I'm concerned about... Now, they played well in the first NIT game, but at Viejas Arena, I don't think the fans really care about this. They sold out every conference game, 12,000 plus. In the first game, there was only 8,000 fans. So they won, and now here they are with the second game. But you wonder, will the fans show up? Will the players get into it? And that's a question I can't ask, because that goes back to motivation, where you saw St. Bonaventure lay an egg too. They weren't excited to be there, and a lot of times the fans don't show up either. And that's the case here with San Diego State. See what happens in the second game as well coming up tonight.
And it's such a contrast in style here. Washington, a team that's so comfortable running and gunning, and the Aztecs, who don't give up anything in transition and force you into these half-court games. Washington can fill it up. I mean, they have generally found it fairly easy to put the biscuit in the basket this year. They don't have San Diego State's defensive acumen, but they're so much better offensively. I mean, we saw it in that Mountain West final. San Diego State at times they struggle to get good shots, take good shots, and make anything. Fascinating game here on the West Coast.
Up next, the deep dive. Topic of the day, back to the tournament, the committee, conference breakdown, and who's left, and the play of the day. We look to stay red hot on SportsBit. Betting Insight today. All right, back on SportsBit, Paulie and Teddy, deep dive, topic of the day, and then the play of the day. We'll get to the committee in a second here, Teddy, but let's break some of this down, what happened the first 4 days. Oh my God, what a disaster for the Pac-12. They only have one team left, and again, Oregon was in a lot of trouble with 5 minutes left against St. Joe's. You get 7 teams in, only one moves on to the Sweet 16. They also set a record. They had 5 teams that went out in the first round. They all had a better seed as well. Unmitigated disaster for the Pac-12.
And we talked about how this conference was overseeded. So when they're overseeded, that means they're facing lesser opponents than they would have faced if they were properly seeded. So not only did the Pac-12 do have a miserable weekend, they did it against weaker foes than they were actually supposed to face. And, of course, the markets knew better. I mean, they made number 11 seed Gonzaga the favorite over number 3 seed Utah. And the whole game, of course, it looked like the Zags had an extra player on the court. What was up with the Utes in that game? They were playing in mud.
I couldn't believe that. They were down 30 points. At 11 against the 3, they're down 30. They had no business being on the same floor. I couldn't believe that. That was embarrassing.
And Utah was the second best team in the Pac-12.
I know. And again, what Oregon bailed them out too. And how USC lost. Colorado's up 9 at the half. Oregon State got beat by VCU, although they were underdogs in that one. Plenty of games where the Pac-12 didn't show up or lost a heartbreaker as well. A couple thoughts on the committee. They rewarded the big boy, the teams from the Power Conference. Vandy, Tulsa, Colorado, Texas Tech, Oregon State all got in. Why Vandy? I mean, they finished 19-13 and a listless performance against Wichita State. They left out Monmouth, they left out Valpo and St. Mary's, 3 teams that won their conference and dominated, but all lost in their conference tournament. No reward there. They put all the big guys in. Another reason why Cinderella's dead. But a lot of those teams didn't fare well, and they didn't help out the committee with their performances, Teddy.
Well, I mean, you talked about Vandy. I mean, 19-13 got rewarded. Meanwhile, Monmouth was and you talked about the 3 teams that really stand out. Monmouth, Valpo, St. Mary's. 3 quality mid-majors, winning mid-majors. And you notice the difference between the winning mid-majors and the not so much. The winning mid-majors, hey, guess what? You have Middle Tennessee State. Great year. They won all year in conference. And, oh, by the way, they were a 15 seed that knocked off a 2 in one of the bigger upsets in NCAA tournament history. You look at Little Rock. They were a 4-loss team. They won all year. Not like Vandy, not like Colorado, not like Texas Tech, not like Oregon State. And, of course, what did Little Rock do? Down 13 against Purdue, no problem. Come back and erase it, win in double OT. The teams with winning pedigrees and that winning mentality, like Monmouth, like Valpo, like St. Mary's, probably would have been better entrants than what we saw from the middling major conference foes.
Oh, they did a bad job with the Missouri Valley, too. Northern Iowa, 11 seed. They should have made the Sweet 16. Wichita State, 11 seed. They were favored against ACC power of Miami. And they did a horrible job with those teams. And Wichita, that's another thing what they did. You can blame CBS for what they did to Wichita. Wichita, late Tuesday night in Dayton, late Thursday night. And then they screw them with the early Saturday game. Oh, brutal stretch for Wichita.
Yeah, and one of the things that stood out to me from the first couple rounds of the Big Dance is that many of the quote-unquote upsets, they didn't look like upsets because once the game started, the underdogs, A, realized that the favorites weren't that good, and B, weren't intimidated in the slightest. I mean, when you watched Middle Tennessee beating Michigan State, Middle Tennessee looked, it wasn't like, oh, we're going to drain a bunch of threes and the other team isn't. Sparty shot 50-something% from the floor and hit 11 threes in that game. Middle Tennessee State was not intimidated, and they certainly weren't the only ones. There were plenty like that this past weekend. So, yeah, it's an upset in the bracket. Yeah, it's an upset from the point spreads, But when you watch the eye test, when you watched them play, it didn't look like that big of an upset. Not that many of them.
Here's some other numbers. Again, a 13, 14, and 15 won on the same day. That had never happened. A 14 seed, remember this, file it away. A 14 seed has won 4 years in a row now in the tournament. The lower seeded teams that went off as a favorite started the tournament 6-0 straight up and 5-1 ATS. I also mentioned 10 double-digit seeds won in the first round. That's a record, 9 in 2001 and 2012. Let's look at the teams that are left. So we ripped the Pac-12, and rightfully so. Oh, my God, with the ACC. 6 teams in the Sweet 16, Teddy.
Yeah, we got 6 from the ACC, 3 from the Big Ten, 3 from the Big 12, 1 each from the Big East, the SEC, the Pac-12, and, of course, your mid-major entrant, Gonzaga, who's certainly not a bottom feeder mid-major. There aren't. Who's a Cinderella left? Syracuse? Let me run through some ATS numbers because everyone's talking about what a crazy, crazy tournament it was, and oh my God, huge upsets littered the first round. Look at the aggregate stats, okay? And I'm counting favorites here, and by favorites I mean -2 or higher. If you're -1.5 or -1, and we saw a bunch of games where there were flip favorites, one side or the other, I kind of threw those games out. But through all the carnage on Thursday and Friday, favorites of -2 or higher, 15 and 14 against the spread, on Saturday and Sunday, 8 and 6 against the spread. You made more money betting favorites than you did betting underdogs, even with all the upsets. We talked a little about over-under and how the first round games were fairly high scoring. I got 19, 12, and 1 to the over in the first round. Well, over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 6 overs to 10 unders. The pendulum swung the other way. One more to talk about, Paul, or you got something you want to jump in here with?
No, go ahead.
All right, because we got the straight-up winner winning against the spread. And we always talk about just pick the winner. Don't worry about the point spread. The point spread will work itself out. If you did nothing but pick the straight-up winner in the first 48 games over Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you went better than 75% ATS, 36, 11, and 1. A&M, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Oregon, 4 on Sunday, 1 but didn't cover. On Saturday, everyone that won covered. On Friday, Iowa, Maryland, Oklahoma were the only teams to win and not cover. On Thursday, it was Miami, Florida, Duke, and North Carolina. All those ACC entrants didn't get the money, even though they got the straight-up victories.
Hey, one more thing on Middle Tennessee, Michigan State. Considering most people thought Sparty should have been a 1 seed, and I went back and forth again because Middle Tennessee's in Conference USA, and that league's won 2 years in a row. How big of an upset was that? I know it was 20-1 on the money line, but when you factor in that most people had Sparty going to the championship game, or at least the Final Four, and they go out and they're down 15-2, I mean, how big of an upset do you think that really was in the entire history of the tournament?
It's got to be. I mean, it's up there. It's up there with Hampton beating Georgetown and the like. When a 2 beats a 15, it's as big an upset as you get in the NCAA tournament because no 16 has ever beaten a 1. So when the 15 beats the 2, and when that is the top-seeded 2, and that 2 is someone who many people, myself included, had as a Final Four team, as a national championship team, call it a top 5 upset in NCAA history. Is it the biggest upset in NCAA history? Is that what you're looking for, Paul?
No, it's not that. But when you factor,
you could say that it was.
Not from a
point.
point.
Make an argument that it was.
Yeah, not from a point spread, but yeah, when that was because if they were supposed to be a 1 seed, and most people had them Final Four of the championship game, and they go out like that, and it's 15-2 in the first score. That truly was a shocker.
All right, give me one more. I got to do one more thing because
Sure.
You're talking about all the seeding left and all the double digits. All right, the South, we got 1, 2, 3, 5. No upsets. A 4 beating a 5 is not an upset. The West is 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the Midwest, got 1, 4, and then 10, 11. All right, well, then the 10 Syracuse, they were favored in Pick'em. The 11 Zags, they were favored in Pick'em. So it's not like these are huge upsets. The biggest upsets here, number 6, Notre Dame, they were favored twice. So you have Wisconsin. They were a dog on Sunday. They were the longest of all the long shots from a Vegas standpoint, is a 7 seed making it. Again, I don't worry about the 4 or 5s, but you really don't have that many long shots going in Sweet 16 weekend.
And now that should be 30 of the last 32 years a double-digit seed has made the Sweet 16. This is a lot of fun. Play of the day. 4-1 last week, and the loser was Akron. They were getting 5. They were up 1 with 2 minutes left, and then the wheels came off. 2 weeks ago, 3-1-1. So a lot of fun here. We're on a roll. Let's keep it going. Spurs, Hornets, under 198.5. As we talked about, the Hornets have really struggled on offense lately. They were a mess last week. They couldn't crack 100 points at home against the Mavs and the Nuggets, who play zero defense. Then you got to go up against that juggernaut with the tough San Antonio D. Will go under 198.5 for the play of the day. Excellent job, Teddy. A lot of fun, great information. We're back Tuesday. Tell your friends. SportsBit. Betting Insight today.